Welcome to One Broken Mom, a podcast dedicated to raising awareness of mental health, parenting, and self-improvement. I am the host, Ameé Quiriconi. One Broken Mom is not a family show. It is meant for adults and contains sometimes adult language. The topics I cover can be serious and unsettling to people. However, I do have a sense of humor laced with a little bit of a punk rock attitude. So if you're interested in real talks about real stuff by real people so that we can all get better together, well, then you're in the right place, and so welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome today. I have Andy Grant with me, and he is a best-selling author, award-winning speaker, transformational energy coach, an Akashic Records Reader, and suicide prevention activist. He holds a variety of coaching and psychology certificates and is very experienced with leadership programs and a ton of different energy work modalities. Andy teaches workshops on a variety of topics and is the founder of Real Men Feel, which is a movement encouraging men to come out of their emotional closets. He's also facilitates monthly men's groups, and as a survivor of multiple suicide attempts, Andy knows how low people can get at their emotional state and how they can feel. And he is committed to helping people realize just how amazing life can be. So welcome, Andy, to One Broken Mom.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. The universe really stirred up some energy around men's mental health this week, which is great because you and I had already had plans to talk. But for anyone who is listening that doesn't have Facebook or listens to this podcast or watches this podcast later on, this week Gillette released a short film challenging men to not just be what they think is an acceptable status quo, but to be better and realize that they're setting the example for the next generation of boys. Now, personally, I loved the ad. I admitted last night on Andy's panel that I did with him for Real Men Feel that, I mean, it literally draws tears. It rises all kinds of positive emotions. But it didn't stir up any of the fearful feelings that I think some people didn't expect or were surprised by, because quite frankly, I wasn't the target. It did, however, stir up in me a different emotion, and that is my rise to action and my constant and unrelenting quest for justice and fairness. That's just who I am as a person. And so while I am a broken mom and a woman, I have always been vocal in my position regarding men's mental health, with the primary reason being is that I'm a mother to a future man. And in my journey that I've taken, that many of you have listened and kind of shared and come along with me, through therapy and education, I have seen the light, so to speak. And that is, not only am I his mother, but my son's emotional development is dependent on the experiences I share with him. And looking at the research around abusive men, a man's overall feelings towards women, even the subtle expressions of sexism and misogyny, can typically be traced to a conflicted or an ambivalent relationship with mom. And I will say something about mom. I mentioned this back in the beginning of this entire podcast. I get that not everybody has a female mom in their life. And so when I talk mom, I've always said this: mom is your primary caregiver. It is your ultimate person who is the responsibility there. And so that's why I'm exercising my women's privilege. And, just as we talk about white privilege and race relations, and that privilege that I have is that I'm allowed to be able to express my emotions and feelings, and that I have the liberty to search for them, understand them, and share them, even if they're not always acceptable to some people. And since I stand in a space in society and culture that men aren't allowed in right now, much like in race relations, then I believe it's my moral obligation to reach my hand out and help others that want to be there too. Emotions are not gender specific. In fact, we are in a watershed moment here for humanity. This isn't a cultural or sociological change that's happening. We're discovering out the truths about human development, truths that transcend culture and trends because they are biological. And how does that influence culture? Is that we have to stop ourselves and suspend our beliefs for just a moment and begin to examine what we've been taught and experienced in child rearing and realize it's not enough. And while, yes, we all, including our own parents and their parents and their parents, did their best, I get that. Our best has got to be better or nothing is going to change. And so that's my soapbox and why I stand on it when it comes to men's mental health. So again, Andy, I am so glad that you're actually here with me to be able to have this discussion. I'm stoked.
Good. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do this. So, you and I did this panel last night. You actually hosted it and initiated it. And did you get any other feedback? Because I know that I actually got some comments afterwards from some men that I thought was actually pretty interesting. But I didn't know if anybody reached out to you or shared anything else about this. And if you want to just kind of talk about what we talked about last night.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything new. I've mostly been promoting it and spreading it like a virus as far as I can. But so we had 9 people discussing their reaction to the Gillette ad and their reaction to other people's reactions to the Gillette ad. And I was kind of surprised. Most of the people we had, there was a lot of agreement. Mm-hmm. I thought in my my random collection of people, someone would be against something or there'd be a minority speak of someone who took offense to it, but there wasn't really anyone. That wasn't anyone's reaction, but there was what I liked was there's empathy for people that were reacting and were in that fearful state. But I have seen more comments, and it continues to talk about the campaign, but men talking about that they feel the ad has attacked them for being men. And I've watched it again, and there were some subtle scenes of like a guy's about to go chase a pretty woman walking down the street, and someone says, "Hey, that's not cool." And what was he going to do? He looks like, instead of people, what? I can't approach women. I can't talk to people on the street. Like, what does this mean? And okay, if you're really going to dissect this shot by shot, there are things that, well, yeah, what is that trying to tell me? But the biggest conflict I'm seeing is, in one sense, men are told, be strong, be powerful, be in charge, be a leader. And then they're told, be open and be vulnerable and be soft and have emotions. And some guys feel they're attacked on either end when they do that. So right. It's a time, especially, and I'm glad the discussion is happening. It's a time of guys trying to figure out what does it mean to be a man? What am I supposed to do? What am I allowed to do? And doing things they've always done. If as an individual you haven't felt a negative repercussion, if no one's confronted you, if you haven't crossed a line with anyone, it can be hard to then see that it's being called out as being wrong some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some of and I agree with the assessment last night that, I think everybody there was, I don't quite get why the visceral reaction, is there. This morning it was interesting because then I did get feedback from some, one man, I told him his comment was very brave, and he goes, at the expense of probably losing friends, I'm going to tell you actually how I felt about it. And I thanked him for it and asked him if I could, relate and share it. I'm not going to, give out his name or anything like that. And I'm going to paraphrase what he had written, but the essence of it was, this confrontation and this fear. And I kind of feel like, actually, screw it. Let me see. No, I don't want to open up my window. I was going to say I was going to open it up, but I don't want Facebook to blow this up. But he had expressed, he's like, I've made those mistakes. I've done those things myself, but I was, here I am. I feel like I've raised 4 great sons. He's got a relationship with his wife. They've been married for forever. He is a good person. He is a good human. And what it left him feeling, and another guy that I know reached out to me and said, was that there is a fear factor in here. There's a silent majority, right? We have the big end of the fuck you for telling me what to do, and attacking, and making men pussies by telling them that they can't fight or they can't, be all macho and stuff like that. And then the other end of it that I saw comment-wise, which was, I don't get it. If you get pissed off, then you're a part of the problem. So it's kind of like the bell curve, right? But right there in the middle is a whole lot of men not saying anything, and when I watched the ad again this morning, you can kind of see, and I don't know if Gillette and the producers intended that, but if you look in the faces of some of the men looking at themselves in the mirror, many of them actually look afraid. They're sitting there going, now I have to question things that I thought were okay, because like you said, nobody ever pointed that out to me. And I do believe that there is, in the middle there is a middle ground of flirtiness and banter and, that we both do. And that was what one of the men said to me is, women do it too. And it's like, oh, totally, and that if you made an ad like that about women, that there'd be all up, we'd all be in uproar about, how badly we were treating women for, whatever it is. And so I don't know, do you think that somewhere in there that there's, that pretty much, and I showed the video to my son, and I could see in him too, this whole, like, I get what they're saying, but he also had this like trepidation right here. And I think he also felt a little judged, you know? And so I'm wondering, like, you know, you're the guy, I'm the female. I didn't feel that way, but do you think that there's some merit in there, that there's a lot of men feeling like, I'm just feeling a little judged right now, and I don't think I'm a dick, but yet I don't know how to not be a dick, or when I'm a dick, and what do I need to do to not be dickish, you know, when I think that I'm actually being a decent human.
And that's why if I'm comfortable that I'm a decent human being, I'm not bothered or challenged by a video saying, hey, let's be decent human beings. But I think it, you know, the way you're phrasing it, I think the video is inviting people to judge themselves, to get a little introspection. So again, the video is asking questions. Is this the best a man can be? You know, if we challenge ourselves, we can be better, right? Are you willing to show other men when they're crossing the line? It's not, I've never gotten from it, men are bad. All right, you're all bad boys. Go to your room, stand in the corner. But again, some are reacting that way, but everyone has to decide how they've been in the past, how they are right now. So that moment of introspection and judgment, I think it's self-inflicted judgment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Gillette is not sitting in judgment. Gillette just wants to get their name out, right? But maybe the actual analysis is that, you know, women buy men razor blades. So if we're offending men, we don't care. We're trying to win the women over. Like, maybe that's part of the corporate thinking leading up to this. But you know, I think it's a awesome thing for your son to look at it and maybe have a bit of confusion as opposed to fear. Like, am I doing the good thing? Right? Like, I don't think a guy has to rape someone to know that rape is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
And you know, but being a dick, that's blurry.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So you know. The video is not even 2 minutes long, so it's just raising issues. It's not condemning. It's not passing a judgment or a sentence on masculinity or men, but you know, it shows adults stopping kids from fighting and from bullying each other, and you know who can be against that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, when we talked last night, you know, one of the things, you know, and I appreciate you inviting me on to the panel for my perspective. Because for me, like I said then, and like I said here in the beginning of this episode, you know, after I showed my son the video, I actually talked to him. I said, you know, here's how I felt when I watched it. And I shared with him what I had shared with you on the show, which is, that I don't think that it's entirely his obligation to figure out what it means to be a good man or a good human in this case. And we use the word human a lot on the panel last night. This isn't a gender thing. It's just, you know, how do you treat people in that way? And what tools do we all have to learn how to evaluate that? And so I told him, I said, you know, for me, I feel like how you will learn how to have love and respect for women is what I show and model for you, that, you know, that I have that responsibility to do that piece of it. And that's why, you know, my soapbox is that moms are the first relationship our sons have with any woman. And I know people are like, oh, that's kind of creepy. No, I don't mean this like in an Oedipus type of a way or in a sexual way, but our bonding and our ability to emotionally connect starts with that primary caregiver, that mom person there. And, you know, when I see that silent majority in the middle there, I wonder out loud, and I invite people to write back to me, talk to me about this, is whether or not that mixed message, like I said in the panel last night, is because of this ambivalent relationship that we have with mom. This, I love her, but yet I felt like I could never connect to her. I felt let down at times when I needed her, and then I didn't get it. But God, I love my mom, because we all are wired to connect in that way biologically and also socially. You know, mom is, you know, on a pedestal, and if mom's a single mom and she's working her ass off, we got to love her even more because she's sacrificing for us. But that doesn't mean that we don't have those mixed feelings of like, I'm crying inside and my mom is not available to me, and that is what we kind of keep carrying through. You know, that because that becomes, again, the wiring, the synapses that get reinforced in childhood that then become this underlying subtle, you know, messaging or feelings that we have, you know, about women. And, you know, to be honest, women have those feelings too. You know, and this isn't just a man feeling, it's a, you know, but women can have, you know, and be misogynistic. I guess it's probably not the right word, but, you know, we talk about mean girls. and having this kind of needling and hate of other women, that's all kind of in the same, the same realm in there and stuff. And so, explaining to my son that, like, I have a responsibility here, and it is to make sure that you and I have the first healthy, emotionally connected relationship. And then there's no question on what it means to be, a good human, moving forward. So that was
even having that, creating that, it'll be judged and evaluated by others.
Yeah.
So my parents divorced when I was 5. My mom always talks about, I just knew I was the most mature adult 5-year-old in the world. And I was just always a good boy. I didn't get yelled at. I didn't get in trouble. I just did the right thing. And I remember my dad, I was like 8 or 9 years old. And my dad would talk about how close I was to my mom. And it bothered him. Like, and he would talk about the Oedipus complex to me at 8 years old. I mean, like, so I shouldn't like my mom. I was so confused. Like, it's wrong to be close to my mom. Like, what are you trying to tell me? I realized it was like jealousy. Like, he was seeing me like every other Sunday for a few hours, and he wanted more than that. So he would kind of, nitpick or say that really, you're awful close to that lady. That's kind of weird. And I'm like, she's the only family I have. What am I supposed to do?
Right. And then you wonder, I not getting into, analyzing our parents' lives or anything like this on this, but then you sit there and you wonder, like, gosh, did your dad ever feel connected with his mom? And was it jealousy rooted in the fact that he, was feeling that it triggered him, and that own lack of it there. Yeah. I've said this before. I did a video about a year ago, and I talk about, when we talk about childhood trauma, which we're gonna hear about your story, because it's a pretty powerful story. Is that, it's an experience we live twice. First, when we're children and we are sitting here trying to survive, and again, our brain is helping us come up with survival modes, and it's giving us actions, and it's responding to the world around us because it's the right choice at the right time. If you're not getting the emotional connection, it's forming something in its place. And sometimes that leads to codependencies and addictions and anxiety and depression, because that lack of connection that we have when we need it, when the brain's coming together. And that's tragic. That's tragic for children growing up in that way and feeling alone and acting out, becoming bullies or killing themselves or whatever the myriad of ways that children end up kind of finally giving up. But then the tragedy is that then as adults, we're judged for the results of all that. And that's what I see now with this Gillette ad, is a lot of finger pointing at adult men and women, back and forth. Everyone's doing that because we're judging them for the results of them as children having to come up with a survival mechanism that was beyond their control. The brain didn't ask them. It didn't give them choices. You can't even comprehend that. And that's, to me, like I said, that's why this is so important in discussing mental wellness and mental health and understanding brain development and looking at it from that way. And that's why I can't today. I can't hate. I can say that I have a boundary and that I won't allow your toxic nature into my life, but at the same time, there's no hate behind that. There's nothing but empathy and sympathy for the conditions that brought that to there. It doesn't mean I'm going to invest a lot of emotional energy in fixing somebody that can't be fixed or doesn't want to be fixed, as if that's even a choice. We already know some people can't choose to be better. They just are so, the pathology of what happened to them is just so strong that, it's a foregone conclusion for them. So your trauma story, I've heard clips of it when you and I talked and stuff, and that you've attempted suicide multiple times. And in our interview, you said that the first time was when you were 8 years old.
No, my first thinking of it.
Okay.
My first attempt, I was not much later. I think I was 12 with my first attempt.
Wow. So I'm going to just ask you, why did you do that?
In those moments, I'm sure there was a last straw, but it was all bullshit. But, my parents divorced when I was 5. My dad was an alcoholic. At the time of the divorce, I began getting molested by a next door neighbor. And I shut it down. I did not have conscious memories of that until I was 19 or 20 years old, and I was in my 5th mental hospital, and suddenly these memories came back. But from that experience, I really shut down as a kid. I stopped talking. I went inward. I decided the world was not a safe place. And I was also a very empathic kid. Mm-hmm. And I would just burst into tears. I was a crybaby. I was sensitive and I was weak and I got picked on for it. but I would be overcome just by tears and just think that there's just something horribly wrong with me. I'm not like anyone else. And I had a few friends, but going beyond my circle of 3 or 4 friends, I didn't feel safe. I felt, the world was dangerous. My dad was always saying that high school are the best years of your life. And looking back, well, he was 19 and 20 years old telling me this. He didn't have much more than high school. So, but again, as a kid, high school's the best. And well, I don't really love school yet. And, I remember having suicidal thoughts, making plans as young as the 3rd grade. In 7th grade, there were attempts. My parents brought me to child psychologists, and I would just lie. I didn't, I'd tell them something to give them a story and leave me alone. I didn't want help.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to get out of here. So there were multiple attempts through high school, and it was finally after, I think it was my 5th attempt that I was just, curled up, crying in the fetal position. I just had to admit that, I'm not good at this either. There must be a better way to navigate my life. I'm supposed to be here. What the hell am I here for? And I slowly started to think, well, maybe I've gone on through this and I'm surviving it because I'm supposed to share it and I'm supposed to help other people. And that's the first time I was kind of willing to get helped.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, actually talking to counselors and therapists and telling them what I was thinking. And again, that led to this memory of the molestation. And, there was a brief time I thought, there's the trauma. I'm all good now. And that didn't happen. It wasn't just remembering something and talking about it for 20 minutes didn't like erase the pain. It didn't erase the years of believing I wasn't safe, that there was something wrong with me, that I was flawed, that the various mental health diagnoses that I would get and the medications that just gave me horrible side effects and just made me feel even worse. And I can remember in high school being on lithium and just having really bad shakes and truly walking into my locker, just face first, hitting my own locker door. And I was like, if this is like what people are supposed to feel like, it made me more suicidal. Like I want out. If this is what everyone else's life is like, I want no part of it. So it took a long time to discover that I wasn't the diagnosis. I wasn't the labels I had been given, right? Depression was something that I experienced, but it wasn't me. And just for decades, I thought, hi, I'm Andy. I'm suicidal and depressed. How are you? Even if I'm in a good mood, I thought that's who I was. I brought all that baggage with me. When I met my wife, after a couple of good dates, I was like, I got to tell you, I'm a mess. I've tried to kill myself multiple times. And if shit gets tough, I don't know what I'll do. And I would use that almost as a wall. So no one else can hurt me because I'm gonna tell you how much of a psychopath I am ahead of time. So you won't be able to hurt me anymore because I'll run away. I'll push you away. And I was not raised with any sort of religion, so it wasn't like I wanted something else. I just wanted my pain to stop. I wanted my life to end. I didn't think I didn't think I was going to go to heaven. Didn't think I was going to go to hell. I just wanted everything to stop. I was just tired of feeling so broken. At age 14 and 15, I was getting drunk alone so that I could cry. That
Wow.
was the only way I could emote. Because from younger ages being picked on for crying. So I'm like, all right, so I will only cry alone in the dark, drinking a bottle of wine. And it was just, but those were mechanisms that kept me going. Like that brought some release. And even, had this distorted view of how to treat myself. After I made a suicide attempt, I usually ended up in a hospital. And because I was like kind of forced to get help, and there would be relief. I felt better.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like 23 years old the first time I thought, I'm depressed. I'm thinking about suicide. What if I don't take action, but I go get help? I just skipped the trying to kill myself part. Can I do that? And I did. And I felt like I'm like an adult now. I'm actually growing up. I didn't have to just try to harm myself and have someone pick up the pieces. I could raise my hand and say, yeah, I feel like shit and I don't know what to do about it. And that was the last time I was hospitalized.
At 23.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Because it was like I was willing. I like, help me.
Yeah.
And and I've gotten help from then on, years of different counselors and therapists. And then it brought me into energy work and spirituality and discovering I'm more than just some random chemicals that are misfiring synapses. And, I have much more control over my emotions and thoughts than I was ever told growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing too, because I bring this in actually earlier this week, I interviewed an actual neurobiologist and we talked about neuroplasticity, which, as I mentioned in that interview, like that's where I hang my cap of hope on, which is just because the synapses were formed doesn't mean you don't have the ability to prune them and actually change them. And that's a big deal. Like that should be like the carryway, like, hey, some real fucked up shit may have happened to you, but guess what? The brain is actually plastic. Like it can be reformed. So you can actually go back. And that's why, I've had my own in and outs with therapy until this last year. And I think you're right on with the mindset, going in because you feel like you have to do something, something's not quite right, but never like you have to jump in and commit to doing it and like just put yourself in there. And like I said, I know your focus is on men's mental health. And, as you and I talked about, women have some of the same hangups too, despite having a realm of safety of expressing, being held back emotionally and not being able to fully communicate is something that we've all shared. We've all kind of gotten some similar experiences to it. But yeah, therapy and being committed to it and working yourself through it is a big deal there. So when did you start actually helping other people? When did this become like your focus and as your career and like your movement?
Yeah. So I was in 2010, I began this year-long energy coaching program. And it was the first time I discovered energy work and felt energy through my body and was like, wow, I can do things and release thoughts and getting the cellular memory and just learning more about it. So I was in this year-long program and I was in it for me. I was in it to learn tools to just release my shit and change my identity and let myself grow and transform. And about halfway through it, I discovered that, people were fighting to be partnered with me. And like, they were just reputation that Andy's really good at this and you want to get coached by him and all. I'm like, really? Like, I had no idea. And so they started asking me what I was going to do professionally. And I was like, I had not realized that this, I took this program to save my life. I didn't realize, it's kind of a vocational program as well. I was to go do something.
This is a career option.
Yeah. And I was in it and not realizing it, but that's when it starts. Yeah. So 2010, I started seeing clients and letting people know what I was up to. And it was neat. I worked at corporate America and I was very open about what I was doing. And so, my management and people leading projects like, hey, Andy, can you read the energy of this project? Or, hey, do I have good vibes today? Tell me what's going on. And, so especially now when I meet people that they're kind of blurring and they keep their worlds very separate, I'm like, you're underestimating all the people you work with to think that, I've got to keep my spiritual side, hidden over here. And that doesn't flow with work. And I'm like, you're just underestimating people. And so I encourage people to just go for it. Let them know. I had even, corporate America paid for me to get my positive psychology certificate. That was another year-long program. And I convinced them, here's my energy background and it'll help me be a better leader for the company. And, but it was really, I wanted to get kind of the science to back up some of the so-called woo-woo stuff that I was doing. And I expected to have a lot more conflict. But I just kept finding that science is just finally catching up to spirituality and, to learn about research about gratitude and meditation and all the things that I had started doing in my own life to save myself. There's all this research and academia backing it up. So I was really pleasantly surprised by that whole experience as well.
Yeah. And and you're right, because again, that goes back to the neural pathways that, the brain isn't just a bunch of like marbles, and compartments in there. They're all connected, together, even through the, rational thinking with emotion and all that. And so, and that's why I said, we're in a watershed moment when it comes to research and science, and it's taken still 20 years to get there, but it's ramping up fast. Like every time there's a breakthrough, it's just like we're on the top of the roller coaster, just getting ready to come down. And so, explaining people like how much are you affected by the new research and science? Just look at artificial intelligence and how much more it has infiltrated our life. From marketing and why certain ads pop up and stuff is because they've taken the neuroscience science, and they've been able to apply it, in corporate ways. But, you mentioned being more empathetic, and that's something I can definitely relate to in there. Cause I always sit there and think about my own personal experiences and why maybe my reaction or feelings about something were more traumatic to me, than to somebody else sitting in the room kind of having the same deals. And I think that there is that feeling of, if you just have a more sensitive attunement to emotions, and that it is DNA, that's the way that brain, and all those neurons come together. That's just how the genes played out for there. I appreciate with what you're doing with the energy, because there is that piece of like, you can actually feel, you can feel tension. Like we've all felt that. We can feel tension in a room, and that is that piece of that energy, spirituality and stuff. And so I love it. I love it that you were, encouraged in that direction. I imagine though, that woo-woo-ness is a turnoff for a lot of men, like in wanting to go that deep into it. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it's all about the term. So I'll talk using language of who I'm dealing with, but you hear Trump talk about it all the time. I trust my gut. I don't care what the advisors say. I go with my gut. So if I'm talking to a businessman, I'll talk about gut, maybe intuition, on that. But yeah, when you walk into a room and you can tell the heaviness that there's just been a fight, there's something has happened there. Or you can walk to a group of people that are laughing. You've missed a joke. You just walk, but you start mirroring that energy. So energy is contagious. They can call it whatever you want. And we're all empathic. We're all psychic. We're all picking things up. We all have more than our 5 senses. It's just, are we aware of it? Are we taking control of it? Are we using it? And to me, that's what energy work is. And, Reiki, chiropractic, yoga are all things that used to be really fringe, and now they're everywhere. And, the same is for just energy work, but it's all energy. We are energy, right? We're spiritual beings having a physical experience. We're not just some science experiment. We're not just a bag of flesh that was somehow animated, and we're barely functioning robots or whatever it is. But
yeah,
we're a lot more than we think.
Yeah. And I would love to I sat there and I thought, it'd be great to get an astrophysicist on the show, because, knowing that we're just a nano of the entire cosmosphere. And when you look at the brain and you look at the way synapses and the brain cells work together, and then you look at the Hubble telescope images of the galaxy, you realize that we are just, small versions of the same thing. And so when you're looking out into the vastness of space, and there's dark matter, there's energy fields between things that, the naked eye can't see. To me, from my scientist nerd brain, is like, well, then why isn't that not a possibility? Like, just because you can't see it, I think we should get to the place of where we realize that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so I hold open like the space for it. It'll be really cool to find out, like, if we can have like a Hubble telescope of, us, and to be able to start to detect, that movement, that, that energy field that does exist in there. Cause, we felt it, I agree. And yet we don't have an explanation for it. And I think it's actually out in astrophysics. Like, I think if you go out there and then go, let's shrink it down and look at us here. And is that unreasonable to think that can't happen in the next 10 or 20 years? No, I don't think so at all. So Neil deGrasse Tyson, if you want to come on my show and talk to me about that, I'm on.
I'm old enough to remember that when I was first being taught about the brain, so your brain stops developing. You only have so many brain cells. Like, right. My dad told me, when you drink and you get drunk, that drunk feeling is because you've killed brain cells and they don't come back. I'm like, oh, well, like, all right, then why? And that was another thing that made me, had me questioning why be alive as a kid. I saw adults, at jobs I didn't like, waiting for the weekend to get drunk. And then my dad's telling me, oh, that just destroys your brain. And so they're like, all these adults are working and complaining and killing their brains every weekend. And like, that's what I have to look forward to? I'm not interested. But, now we do know about neuroplasticity, and that we are more resilient than we ever realized. And, that was a key thing I discovered. I didn't think I had any resiliency because I kept wanting to give up and get out of here. But every time I survived my own murder attempts, I was building that resiliency muscle, and it just took me longer than I would advise for anyone to just see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and we're all grateful that you did get there. For a multitude of reasons, just because Suicide is super sad to me. I mean, murder is probably a really great word. It's just that we murder ourselves. And statistically, I've said this out on the show before, that, twice as many people in this country die from suicide at their own hands than are actually murdered by, other people. And over 1 million people attempt it every year. It is if you really want to save lives, mental wellness is how you genuinely save lives. So, people soapbox on gun control, which I don't want to get into this right now. This isn't a political show, but I always counter back with, if you want to save lives, take notice of what we're doing in mental health and mental wellness. That's where you can double the life-saving activities by having the conversations and then understanding, really what leads to that for some people. Before our paths crossed, which was a couple of weeks ago, I had already landed on the Good Men Project, a website, which I was fascinated because, like I said, to me, I'm not just champion for, shitty moms out there. I'm looking for, and how do I become a good mom to men? And also because I actually do care about everybody, out there. So, and you're affiliated with the Good Men Project. Can you talk about what that actually is for any of the guys listening that, might want to find themselves kind of moving into and checking that out?
Yeah, goodmenproject.com. It's a place having a conversation about masculinity, about what it means to be a man today, and it's all writers, contributors from around the world. We do 45 posts a day, 7 days a week, every day. So you're going to find topics that you can relate to. You're going to find topics that challenge you, but it's just a collection of writings and blog posts and articles from people all around the world. And for all of 2018, I was a lead editor on the site, and I'm still a weekly contributor. But it's a great place to connect. Anyone can read it. You need to be a paid member to actually be able to post comments and give feedback, but it's like $25 a year to help, keep it going and contribute to the furthering, the deepening of masculinity. And there are plenty of female writers and readers of it as well. It's not some men's only club by any means, but it's a place to find guys doing the introspection, guys doing a little bit of the self-judgment. And is this right? Is this wrong? How do I navigate? But there's things on dating and sex. There's things on parenting. There's things on exercise and fitness. So it isn't only, hardcore, traumatic, gut-wrenching postery. There's humor. Again, because being a man, being a human being, it's multifaceted. There's a lot of aspects to us. But I find it's one of my favorite sites. I was so glad to become part of it because I had heard of it for years too, and I kind of thought, when I first discovered, there's some big goal. I wonder if I could never be with those guys and they know what they're doing, kind of a thing. And this is easy. Once you just say, hi, I'd like to be a part of your organization. Just having the bravery to step forward. But visit it. You can subscribe. You can read them. If you become a member, there are lots of different weekly phone calls and group conversations. They have lots of different Facebook groups. The disposability of men, toxic masculinity, dating and sex and relationships and parenting, just all sorts of different subgroups that kind of to fill whatever area of life that you want some more support in can be found.
Cool. Now, in your practice working with men, how hard do you find it is to get them to open up and to kind of expose themselves and be transparent?
It's hard. It's getting easier. I've been working with clients since 2010. 90% of my clients have been women. And women always assumed, because I look like I do, that I must have this huge, group of men that I've been serving. And it wasn't until I realized that, men kind of need to be called out. That the average guy doesn't know he's a human being. It doesn't know that he has the right to feel, and that actually feeling things will help him feel better. So most guys something has cracked them open before they reach out to me. I've had first sessions. Again, I go to the core. I with the Akashic Records, with energy work, I get past the bullshit and the masks that people say, and I'll pull something out and just show it to them. Say how I can tell them how they're feeling, and I've had just guys burst down into tears and kind of have that first release. And they're always telling me, I can't believe I'm sharing this with a stranger. I've just met you. I can't believe it. I'm like, yeah, it's because you need to. It helps. And often it's easier, and I've always found this in my life, it's easier to tell a stranger everything that I think is wrong with me than to someone that I know. right? I don't really, if you're a stranger, what do I care what you think about me? But if you're my friends, you're my family, you're my parents, your children, if you know my, the horrible thoughts that I have about myself, well, that has a bigger repercussion. There's more of a risk there, right? So it's all about making that safe space, letting a guy know that, and I share, my story, like, I know how shitty we can feel. I know that the darkest impulses of just wanting to check the fuck out of here. And I also know that life is freaking magnificent, and it can be the magnificent for anybody. And, nobody reaches out wanting to get help who can't get help all the way, who can't love their life.
Yeah. Where have you seen in terms of like maybe some common threads in the messaging that maybe a man received through his life that kind of built the pages of his story that said, men and emotions they don't go hand in hand, or, judge them for it or whatever. I mean, what has been that part? Like I said, where have you, or what have you seen?
And so it's rarely something that's ever, no man is taught, here's how to be a man. It's all by mirroring. It's seeing that their dad, their grandfather never showed emotion. That the only time they see their dad cry was at his dad's funeral. It's things, it's the unspokenness. It's the keeping it tight and bound. And I always ask guys, like, whatever your view of masculinity is, did the person it come from, did they enjoy their life? And, if you're modeling someone that was, gruff and mean and a drunk and closed off to everybody, why would you want to live that life? Like, let that be an example of what you don't want to do instead of just what you automatically follow. So it's just, every human being is put into a box, or attempted to be put into a box and labeled by society, by family, by education. And we don't have to stay there. Make your own box, enlarge your box, right? Color on it, put a porthole out in your cardboard box when you're a kid making a fort, right? Just, it can be that easy. It can be that fun. Mm-hmm. But it starts with taking responsibility. And that's kind of a scary word to a lot of guys, because they think responsibility and blame go hand in hand.
Right.
And so we don't care about blame. Something happened. We all have a set of circumstances in our past. We all have circumstances we deal with every day. What we can take control of is how we react, how we choose to think, what actions we choose to take. So you can't make good choices before you take responsibility for your life, for your mental health, for your emotional well-being.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. It's getting people over that fear to take responsibility.
Right.
Blame is easy. People are good at that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help us get forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And that happens in all aspects of it. It's not just also, it's hard to, and I would say, I think it's hard to not kind of default to blame if our experiences growing up were that blame was also easily handed out, around it. Like, we're in this situation because you aren't doing this. And, your mom's upset because you won't, get your shit together. And, your dad left because, whatever it is. I mean, when blame is like a default condition for there, then it is hard to kind of, be able to be in a mental place where you can, exercise that from, your way of thinking. And, for me, I also, in relating to that is when you want to dig in and start to really look at your past and to say, listen, I need to take a heartfelt examination of what these experiences are and how they, how they set the dip switches in my brain, and to change them. People get afraid of having a challenging discussion even with themselves about like, okay, I know we were dealing with poverty. I know that we were dealing with, a dad that was an alcoholic who abandoned us, or whatever, a person's trauma story is. Can I understand that, how that may have affected the adults around me, my caretakers, because they're humans too, that maybe they were sad and they were depressed. And as a result of that sadness and their own depression, I wasn't getting what I needed at that point in time. And so, I had to go into survival mode. And can someone have that reflection internally with themselves and not feel guilty for that? Because guilt, I think, is the other piece of this, is like, I don't want to dig in and find out the truth or uncover the truth of the circumstances, because I don't want anybody to be mad at me. I don't want, I don't want mom to be mad at me. I don't want dad to be mad at me. I don't want my family to ostracize me. And that's a hard one too. Guilt and shame going in with, taking that hard, long look. And I think it's harder. I mean, the irony is it's harder when you grew up around a lot of guilt and shame messages to sit there and suddenly decide that you don't want that anymore, that you've got to pull yourself out. Do you believe that, do you believe any of the myths? I mean, I imagine that you don't, but I mean, the myth and the bias that men will never get it. Men will never get the feelings. They'll never get the emotions the way that women will.
No, I don't buy it at all. Because I get the emotions. I'm a feeler. And I used to think, well, then that must not be a man. But no, I'm comfortable in my masculinity. I know I'm a man. And I know I feel the entire spectrum of freaking emotions. I've had so many women come to me, I wish I could find a man like you. I'm like, really? You want a suicidal, depressed psychopath? That's what you want to be hanging out with? But I get what they mean. They want someone that can be that open. And so I'm not an anomaly. But the guys that are open and feelers are the people that have been picked on, shut down, told they're little girls, told they're a pussy, whatever it is. So there's all this information coming outside telling them to not be open, right? To close that heart. And guys that are brought up by people in that kind of lifestyle, they grew up with a hardening heart from a really young age. And, my wife often points out too, that she has friends say, oh, I want a guy that's open and feeling. And then they get that the guy, he burst into tears. He just lost his, whatever it is. And like, oh, get it together. What are you doing? So when it's to be careful what you ask for, because when you get it, especially if you haven't experienced it, it might not be as easy and beautiful and this great bond made when you do have that, when you have someone opening up. But any emotion lasts longer if we try to stuff it and deny it. Mm-hmm. So I think I got this from Gay Hendricks, but allowing a few minutes of an uncomfortable conversation can eliminate uncomfortable living for years. So our willingness to feel, again, taking responsibility for how, go to the dark place, go to the joyous place, but be willing to feel in the moment. And when you do that, all emotions pass through much quicker, much easier. And you have that bond, right? You're giving the people in your life permission to feel something, and you don't take it personally. You let them have their experience, and you do your best not to judge. And they go, great. Hey, next Thursday, I'm going to freak out about something. Will you be there for me? Sure. And it's not holding on to it, because we're all used to bringing our past with us, but we don't have to. And right. So I don't have to bring your past with you. I don't have to bring, best friends and brothers and sisters often, oh, they fight, but that's family. We do that. Well, why can't we give ourselves that permission? You love your children. You probably don't love everything they ever do.
Right. Yeah.
So the same thing with self-love. Like, I freaking love me. Sometimes I'll make mistakes and do dumb things, but regardless, I still love me. I love my dog. I'm screaming, what are you doing? Don't chew that thing. Well, I still love my dog. And it can be that simple. Emotions can move that easily and quickly, and except when we try to deny stuff, say, oh, I'm not supposed to feel that, or through guilt and shame, I feel like I've been trained and told not to feel whatever shows up.
Yeah. I agree with that. And, one of the things that, why, I've said this about the self-help industry, it's a big industry for a reason, is people try to stuff the feeling, I'm going to just positively think about something, and that will just neutralize the negative feeling. But the key is to figure out, where did the negative feeling come from? And so there's that, and to go from just trying to positively think to override your negative feelings to discovering the origin of the negative feeling, it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but it's a huge deal, and it requires a lot of commitment to be able to do it. And it is uncomfortable to be able to go through there. But like you said, finding people that help you with safe spaces to be able to get through that, because again, we are searching for the root of those negative feelings. And tending to a garden that has a lot of them in there, and it's scary, to think about having to do it. And some people would just rather not worry about it, just deal with the consequences. I've said this before, like, just accept who they are. I am a label, I am a medication, I am fucked up, deal with it, kind of thing. Like, okay, that's your choice too. Cool. I don't judge anybody on that piece. Like, that's, roll with that. it's not going to be, within my boundary, set my own boundaries. And I think that's one of the things that people that go through trauma also have problems with boundaries, that we take on everybody and we want to please everybody, but do you only work, or have you only really worked with other men that have like big extreme trauma stories? I mean, like, a little bit of yours of where it's like sexual, physical abuse or extreme neglect. Or do you find, there are a lot of guys that would probably consider themselves pretty average, that seek out some assistance. I wouldn't say help, but assistance,
Yeah. I definitely have had both for a long time. And for a while, it felt like a curse. Like everyone that came to me had attempted suicide, had thought about it, and a lot of them hadn't told anyone except me. And, for a long time, I thought, like, what's wrong with my energy? What is this ball of depression and turmoil? Why is this attracting people to me all the time? But now more and more that's kind of gone away. But again, it's that I might be the first place that someone felt safe enough to confide in that. And now I take it, as a privilege and see it as an honor. But I've had guys come to me they just feel something's off. Like they know they're capable of more, but they're not feeling it. And so they want to look like they're not sure. Is it my job? Is it my relationship? And, it's usually their image of themselves. And they kind of bought the mask. Like, I'll get the great job. I'll get the great wife. I got the picket fence. I got my 2.5 kids, and I feel empty. And it's doing that inner work to say, well, what do you really want? Were you living someone else's life as opposed to what you wanted to pursue? When did you give up on your own dreams and desires? So any trauma is massive to the person feeling it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's in one of the Chicken Soup of the Soul books, talks about, two sisters, and mom brings them to the ice cream truck as little girls, and she orders 2 ice creams, and they realize she didn't have enough money, could only buy one. So one sister didn't get an ice cream that day, and she grew up thinking, I'm the bad sister. I can never, and it was all because of the one ice cream. So again, the repercussions on her life, massive trauma, but anyone else was there besides her witnessing that moment, no big deal. They don't even realize it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's no such thing as small trauma. There's just trauma. Yeah. And, it can guide you, or you can take control and heal, release, and explore it.
Yeah. Cool. So how does somebody listening to this that wants to work with you, tell me about what you're doing? Because, I have a lot of people that like, hey, I want to tell you my story too. Well, that's cool. I love stories, because they're helpful and stuff. But I do have a filter that I put, which is I love to share stories and then have them of people that actually then have some action. It's not that everybody else's story isn't important, but for listeners here, you're listening because you want to learn and know more. And we will identify at some point with somebody on the show that they can connect to. And so for people that are connecting with you, Andy, and your messaging and the work that you're doing, how do they find you and start to work with you if they're interested in that?
Great. Well, my website that has links to everything I'm up to is theandygrant.com. Don't fall for some generic Andy Grant. You want theandygrant.com.
The official.
Yeah. And I have, you can download some free meditations, experience energy work a little bit yourself on my site. I do a free call with people because I don't allow myself to be hired as a coach. I have a conversation and I make sure that that we're a good fit. I don't coach people that, if someone's coming to me to be the best accountant they can be, that's not my skill set. So I'll use my network. I can refer to them to someone else, but usually I'm dealing with people with emotional challenges, not feeling fulfilled, not feeling connected. I do Akashic Record readings for people. That's online. You do that for people all around the world. The coaching is for people all around the world. I'm an initiate in the Modern Mystery School. I do healings that have a 3,500-year lineage behind them. Those will all have to be done in person. I have processes that literally, truly put more light into you. And everyone feels the energy and enthusiasm, and then your life just unfolds. Your skills, your instincts, your abilities are all heightened. You truly have more energy in your physical body, and just life can just unfold dramatically from there. We mentioned earlier, you were on my show, Real Men Feel. Whatever podcast platform you enjoy, look for Real Men Feel. You'll find 128 shows there to dig into. And it's not just for men. Plenty of female guests, plenty of female listeners. Because I share it often in the show, that the big secret that men don't realize, that they're human beings. Right? We're humanity. We're not masculinity. We're humanity. And that was another thing that came out a lot last night in our panel discussion about that Gillette campaign as well. It's the best we can be. Mm-hmm. And that's what I ask of myself. That's what I ask of my clients. That's what I help them achieve. It's just, ideally, the only person we ever compare ourselves to is to us the other day, right? And the goal is, am I doing better? Am I feeling better? Is there more joy in my life? Am I providing more service? Are the people in my circle, family, friends, coworkers, are they doing better because I'm in their circle? Those are the things I look at. Those are the only things I allow myself to compare myself to going forward.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you're doing fantastic stuff. You've got a great following, Facebook, Instagram, website, the podcast, such a huge community of people that are out there. And I like that it's, again, a safe space. I know, again, I get to talk from my women's privilege of, an emotional pedestal that I'm on. And so it's amazing that, you're putting yourself out there, because it is vulnerable. It's less vulnerable, I think, for me as a woman to sometimes admit failure or emotional struggles than it is definitely for a man to be able to do that. And that's why I said I do believe, with the Gillette thing too, that there's a silent majority of men out there that are conflicted about how they feel about, that particular ad, and they're not alone. I think that's the bulk of them that are out there. And so being able to put yourself out there, finding you to be able to maybe get them connected and talking, at least be in your community so that they can find ways to be able to express and start a path maybe of improving their own life. So Andy, I am so glad that the universe has crossed our paths together in the way that it actually has. You are one of my favorite people here, and I enjoyed talking with you. I think there's going to be a lot you and I are going to be able to do together as we move forward now that we know each other. And so thank you so much for doing this episode with me. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really my pleasure. Earlier you mentioned that we met 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, what? Like, yeah, I feel like we have been connected and bonded and talking for a long time. So, and I take that as a fabulous sign. So thank you.
I agree. Cool.